A man saw an old woman sitting alone at a train station. No one was paying attention to her. She didn't even have shoes. The man looked at her and simply said, "You're coming with me." From that moment on, both of their lives changed forever. But who was this woman? And why were hundreds of people afraid of what she refused to speak about? You're about to witness a truly powerful story. We're just a few steps away from reaching our first 1,000 subscribers, our growing family. From the bottom of our hearts, thank you to everyone who's brought us this far. With your support, we grow stronger with every story. If you haven't subscribed yet, now is the perfect time. The train was long gone, but a murmur still seemed to hang in the air at the station like a sentence left unfinished, its last word frozen midair. The woman sitting at the end of the bench had her back turned to the tracks. She sat the way people do when they've stopped waiting, her back straight, but her shoulders slumped. You wouldn't notice her bare feet at first. Only if you looked closely could you see the cracks on her heels, the way her toes curled beneath her skirt. She didn't have a sack or a bag, just a faded blue cardigan clinging to her thin wrists, almost slipping off at the elbows. Jonas didn't notice the woman at first. Not the way men usually notice women, but more like the way you notice a storm coming or a nervous horse trembling. Like something was off, but you didn't know what to call it. When he stepped off the last car of the train, his boots were covered in dirt. He was 31, but the lines on his face were as old as a swallow's migration, full of loss and unsaid goodbyes. He didn't talk to people. Maybe he'd even forgotten how to say hello. But he looked at her, the woman no one else seemed to see. And the woman looked at nothing, just stared at a spot deep in the soil beyond the tracks, as if someone was there. Or maybe someone who wasn't anymore. "Greta," murmured the station attendant behind the glass while stamping papers. "She's been sitting there like that for 3 days. No one's come for her. No one's left. Not even shoes." Jonas turned his head, but said nothing to the man. He started walking toward her. His steps were heavy, but steady. With each step, more dust rose around him. It brushed against her skirt in the breeze. But the woman didn't move. She wasn't crying. Her face was wet. Yes, but the tears seemed to have seeped from under her skin, quietly, as if they didn't need permission to fall. Jonas stopped a few steps in front of her. He didn't know what to say. "Ma'am," he finally said, his voice cracked but soft. The woman didn't look up. Jonas lowered his gaze. Her toes were curled. "Where are your shoes?" The woman moved for the first time. Her eyelids slowly closed and opened. "I left them," she whispered. "Why?" "They weren't mine anymore." Jonas opened his backpack. He pulled out an old but sturdy pair of women's boots. They had belonged to his mother. He had carried them for years without knowing why. He placed them silently in front of her. She didn't even glance at them. "I don't want help," she said. "It's not help," Jonas replied. "It's just necessary." The woman finally turned her head. Her face was full of lines, but beauty still lived there like a ruined but proud piece of architecture. "You don't know me," she said. "I know," Jonas answered. "But I saw you." In the silence of that moment, a breeze blew. A door slammed somewhere far away. The train was long gone, but Jonas felt as if another one was about to leave, headed somewhere completely different. "You're mine now," he said, barely louder than a whisper. "You're coming with me." The woman didn't ask why. She didn't smile. She didn't run. She just looked as if she were standing at the door of another life, unsure which foot to move first. Jonas started walking. A rusty wagon waited outside the feed store. Behind him, he heard the sound of bare feet, slow, cautious, but certain. When the woman got into the wagon, she still hadn't put the boots on. She just held them in her lap, like a gift or maybe a burden. The road was long and empty. Crows lined the wires above, silently watching. Jonas looked back now and then. The woman sat in the back seat, eyes fixed on some point on the horizon. She didn't speak. "What's your name?" Jonas asked. Much later, almost in a whisper, she answered. "Mara." Jonas nodded. He loosened the reins. The journey had begun, and nothing would ever be the same again. They didn't speak at all the first day. The road stretched out like a single line. Mara still hadn't put on the boots Jonas gave her. She held them in her lap, as if she were holding the last piece of a life she used to belong to. Her feet were cracked, dusty, and tired, but still, she didn't wear the boots. Jonas didn't say anything. He didn't want to touch her past because he didn't have the courage to face his own. The day slowly faded. As the sky turned orange, Jonas stopped the wagon under the shade of a large oak tree. The wind softly whispered through the branches. "We'll stay here," he said. Mara just nodded. Jonas lit a fire. He sat down and watched the flames dance. He took out some dried meat and a few crumbs of bread from his pocket, placing some in front of Mara. The woman held her hands out to the fire. Her fingers were long and graceful, but her joints looked broken hands that once did delicate work, now withdrawn into themselves. Where are you going?" Mara asked, speaking on her own for the first time. Jonas kept his eyes on the fire. "Home," he said. "I don't even know if it's still there, but I don't have anywhere else to go." Mara squinted at him. "You talk like someone who ran away from home." Jonas shrugged. "Sometimes going back is just as hard as running away." Silence fell. Apart from the crackling fire, there was no sound. The sky started to fill with stars. Jonas lay down to sleep, using his jacket as a pillow. Mara sat a little closer to the fire, still holding the boots in her lap. She looked at them for a long time, then at Jonas. Finally, she gently placed the boots on the ground, picked one up, and quietly put it on. Then the other. They were a little big for her feet, but it didn't matter. When she put them on, she took a deep breath as if she had slipped into another skin, as if she had stepped out of her old body. "My name's not Mara," she said. Jonas didn't move. "What?" The woman turned her eyes to the sky. "My real name is Clara. Mara was just something I said on the road. I hadn't said my real name in a long time." Jonas turned his head and looked at her. "Clara." The woman nodded quietly. "They used to call me Clara. Then other things. Mostly worse things." Jonas was silent for a while. "My name's Jonas, but," he paused. There was a time people called me something else. I thought I'd forgotten it." Clara looked at him. "You didn't forget. You just silenced it." One of the logs in the fire cracked, sparks shooting upward. Clara lowered her head. "People died because of me," she said. Jonas closed his eyes. "A child died because of me." The wind stopped. In that moment, their pasts touched. The pain came from different places, maybe, but the weight was the same. This silence wasn't an escape this time. It was an agreement. The second day, the road was rougher. The trees grew sparse, the ground got drier. This time, the wind threw dust into their faces. Jonas didn't say much, but now and then, he looked at Clara through the mirror. She had her boots on, but still limped a little when she walked. It was as if the past tugged at her leg with every step. At noon, they stopped by a small puddle of water. While Jonas checked the water, Clara washed her hands. He noticed an old scar on her fingers. He didn't ask, but in the afternoon, a lone rider appeared on the horizon. Far off, not moving. Jonas stopped. He squinted. Clara turned too, her expression hardening. "I know him," she said. "The rider?" Jonas asked. "Know his posture. That's a tracker. This isn't a coincidence." Her eyes narrowed. "Someone's looking for me." Jonas furrowed his brow. "Someone who wants to hurt you?" Clara closed her eyes. "If it's him, yes." "Why would the rider want you?" Clara turned and looked at him. "Because I lied. Because shouting the truth kills certain men." Jonas tightened the reins. "Then we'll have to move fast." That night, they didn't make camp. They kept moving in silence. The moon lit up the stones on the road like silver. In the background, Jonas thought he could hear the hooves of a horse hitting the ground. Maybe it was real. Maybe it was in his head. But one thing was now certain. Clara's past was following them. And this wasn't just a journey, it was an escape. They passed through the night without stopping. Jonas kept the reins loose, but his eyes alert. The wagon jolted along as Clara leaned her head with the wind not sleeping, but as if she was living in another time. Her eyes were open, yet it felt like she was staring 20 years into the past. Jonas didn't ask. Every question found its answer on the road anyway. Sometimes silence was the only narrator the past needed. Morning came down on them like a gray cloud. Fog had swallowed the edges of the road. Jonas finally stopped the horses. "We should leave a trail," he said to himself out loud. Clara responded. "He already smells us. He's not tracking direction, he's tracking intent." Her words made Jonas pause. He realized then that this woman wasn't just speaking from pain, she was speaking from experience. Clara wasn't just someone who had suffered. She was someone who could read others, who sensed things ahead of time. "Who is this man?" Jonas asked. "Is he really after us?" Clara spoke as she tightened the laces on her boot. "I never learned his name, but he called me quiet. Everyone did. Because he never spoke, just watched. But every time, He waited for the right moment. And when he moved, no one stopped him. If he finds me, he'll silence you too. Jonas closed his eyes. He was starting to realize that taking this woman home was more than saving a life. It was a call to battle, one he hadn't asked for, but couldn't ignore. Later that day, as they entered a valley, Jonas spotted a track. Not tires, hoof prints. And fresh. The wagon slowed. Clara looked up. He's getting close. What do we do? Clara locked her eyes forward. He won't stop unless we kill him. So either we hide, or we face him. Jonas slowly nodded. Just tell me when. By the end of the day, Jonas found the remains of an old hunting cabin. Half a wall, no roof, but backed against rock. Good for defense. He tied the horses beside the cabin, turned to Clara, and said, "Stay here." Then he left to scout the area. In every bush, in every silence, he expected the man. An hour later, when he returned, Clara was holding a handgun. Jonas wasn't surprised. "I kept it," she said. "Never threw it away all these years. It's not even mine. It was his. But my hands don't belong to him anymore." Jonas gave a quiet nod. "Can you use it?" "I tried twice," Clara said. "Both times, I just scared them. The third time, it ends. Or it starts." As night fell, the two settled into the cabin. Jonas hid his weapon under his shirt. Clara, as usual, was quiet, but her arms no longer trembled. Her face was still, but there was a storm inside. "I had a daughter too," Jonas said suddenly. "She was 5, went outside during a storm, and never came back. I was supposed to close the water barrel. I didn't." Clara turned her eyes toward him. She didn't speak, but now they spoke the same language. Children lost, their names turned into whispers, still alive behind their eyelids. Then, near midnight, came the sound of a horse. Jonas stood up immediately. Clara quietly gripped the gun. The sound got closer. They moved behind the back of the cabin. Jonas whispered, "One rider." But there could be more farther off. The horse's hooves struck the stones hard. The man slowed. He just stopped. He didn't speak. Jonas couldn't see his eyes, but he felt them, searching with his gaze. Silent. Then the moment came. The man got off the horse. They listened to his steps. Jonas alert, Clara's hands around the gun. The man stopped in front of the cabin and spoke. "Clara." The voice was younger than expected. Cold, but somehow familiar. Clara's face froze. "That's not him," she whispered. It's not him, but someone in his place. A new one." Jonas stayed sharp. "Who is it?" "Someone they sent," Clara said, "trained to silence me." Just then, a shadow appeared through the gap in the door. Jonas drew his weapon on instinct, but the man was already gone. He ran, melting into the dark. Behind him, he left only a whisper-like murmur. "We'll speak soon." "Clara." Jonas rushed out, but the man had vanished. Clara got to her feet. She still held the gun, but now her hands were shaking again. When Jonas returned, she said, "This has just begun." Jonas bowed his head. "I know, but this time, you're the one who writes the ending." The morning sun rose with a gray haze. The fog hanging over the trees felt like a lingering threat left behind by the night. When Jonas woke up, Clara was already awake, boots on, her hair tied tightly. She held a knife in her hands, rusty but sharpened. "The man from last night?" Jonas asked. Clara didn't take her eyes off the distant tree line. "He was a message. The silent one is still looking for me, but now other hands have gotten involved. We don't even know who we're up against anymore." Jonas touched the necklace under his shirt. A ring. It once belonged to a family. Now, it was just the weight of remembering. "This story you pulled me into. It's become mine now too." Clara slowly turned her head. "I didn't pull anyone into anything, Jonas. You saw me. That's why you're in it. Like anyone who doesn't look away." There was a pause. Only the wind and a few crows moving through the branches. As Jonas got the horses ready, Clara slung her bag over her shoulder. Her steps were careful but no longer hesitant. They set off. The silence between them wasn't a wall anymore. It felt like an agreement. But with every mile, something inside Jonas started to come loose. About Clara, about her past, about his own unfinished pieces. By noon, they came across a structure that blocked their path. A crumbling stone building. It looked like an old school. The windows were shattered, and carvings covered the walls. Clara looked at the building and took a deep breath. "This place, it's familiar." Jonas frowned. "What is it?" Clara walked forward. She ran her fingers along the stone. "I used to teach music here. To little girls. We sang songs, clapped our hands in rhythm. Then someone came and said, "Silence is more virtuous." Jonas watched her. "Who said that?" Clara turned her face. "My husband. He was a preacher. He used God's words in public, but at home only his fists spoke." Jonas closed his eyes. "And your daughter?" Clara suddenly went pale. She heard it all. Everything. One day she went down to the church basement and wrote her own words on the wall. "False gods don't hurt us, cowardly fathers do." Someone read it. They blamed me. They took her from me. But she ran away. She never came back. Jonas crouched down. "She still loves you." Clara's eyes were frozen. "Love's not enough. They buried me, Jonas, while I was still alive. Then I clawed my way through the dirt with my bare hands. But every time, all I found was silence." Right then, a gunshot echoed from far away. Short, sharp, then silence. Then birds scattered. Jonas rushed toward the horses. "That one was for us." Clara lowered her head. "He's still watching. Maybe we're already surrounded." Jonas's voice was firm. "I won't let them take you from me again tonight." They moved, staying low behind the buildings. With every step, Clara walked like she carried her past on her back. Her eyes wandered sometimes on Jonas's back, sometimes in the sky. They were on edge. As night approached, they found a safe place to camp, surrounded by a stone wall, filled with shrubs, and with only one way in. Jonas kept the campfire small. Clara brought her tired knees close to the flames, rubbing the edge of her boot with her fingers. "You know," she said, "sometimes someone shows up and saves you without a word, just by looking, without asking anything. And you can't cry. Not at first, because your voice is gone, but your body remembers." Jonas bowed his head. "When I first saw you, I heard my daughter's voice, like a lullaby that never finished. Then came a whisper, very close." Clara instantly grabbed her gun. Jonas got to his knees. A shadow moved among the bushes. "Don't," Jonas said into the dark. "Don't do something stupid." Silence. Then a soft voice, like a child's. "Clara." Clara froze. Her gun shook. Jonas looked at her. "Do you know that voice?" Clara slowly walked forward, still holding the gun. Her steps lengthened, and when she neared the figure behind the bushes, her knees almost gave out. Standing in front of her was a young woman in her 20s, covered in dirt, her eyes wide but familiar. "Edith," Clara whispered, barely a breath. The young woman didn't cry, but her eyes were tired from crying. "Mom," she said simply, "I never forgot you." Jonas stood still. He slowly brought a hand to his chest. In that moment, many things shifted. Clara's tears flowed silently. The young woman took one step toward her, but they didn't embrace. Not yet. There were still years and countless words between them. But this wasn't running anymore. This was the beginning of facing it. At that hour of the night, nothing was clear. Not the air, not their hearts, not the words waiting to be said. Clara could only breathe, her eyes fixed on her daughter. Edith's face held the weight of years, the dirt of the road, and the mark of a silent war. Neither of them embraced. Because some distances aren't measured just by space but by time. Jonas didn't stand between them. He returned to the fire, his eyes turned to the dark. But his ears were waiting for Clara's voice. For her to tell the story she had been silent about for so long. Clara finally spoke. Her voice was low, but steady. "I tried to reach you. I sent a letter once, but it never came back. Then I heard. They stripped you of anything that reminded you of me." Edith pressed her lips together. "For years they made me believe my mother was insane. They said you declared the church sinful. Then, they forbade anyone from even speaking your name. The more you stayed silent, the more I heard." Clara closed her eyes. "They burned me, Edith. Buried me, but no one used a shovel. They just stayed silent. That was the worst part." Edith lowered her head. "I ran away, and I didn't want to find you. Because if I did, I was afraid I'd learn you really were someone to be afraid of." Those words hit Jonas like a stone in the chest. Because he knew the one thing a child fears more than losing love is being disappointed. Clara didn't come closer, but her voice softened. "I tried to save you, but instead of taking you, I just ran. I carry that. Awake, even in my sleep. That you were afraid of me. That's my greatest punishment." A log cracked in the fire. Jonas flinched. He looked into the dark. A shadow passed. Then another. "We're out of time to talk," he said. "Someone's coming." Edith jumped to her feet. "They're after me," she said. "They want to silence me before you start talking." Clara's face went cold. "Who?" "They're no one. But they have money. And they're like a union of people who want to bury the past. Everyone who's afraid of truth. The ones guarding the old church. The ones who feed the silence. Jonas stood. We can't run, but we can speak. Clara looked at him. There's only 3 of us. Jonas shook his head. No. When you speak, I'll be beside you. And then we won't be just 3. Everyone who chooses to listen will be with us. They spent the night preparing. Jonas cleaned his old rifle. Clara sharpened her walking stick. Edith showed Jonas a few old writings notes Clara had secretly written years ago, never published, but still sewn into the lining of her backpack. By morning, all 3 were ready. And morning didn't come alone. When the riders arrived, the ground cracked. 12 men. Some were familiar to Edith, old faces from the church congregation. The rest were hired hands, paid to preserve silence. Leading them was him, the silent one. He was older now, but still stood tall. His eyes were cold. When Jonas saw that look, he didn't reach for his weapon, because he knew that what needed to be fought here wasn't bullets, but words. The silent one said nothing. Edith stepped forward. Enough, she said. You buried the past, but we kept breathing. And now every breath will bring your ruin. The man lifted his chin. With a gesture, the others began to spread out. Clara threw a letter into the fire. The flames rose. Jonas's voice rose with them. If a woman's voice scares you today, then the silence that protected you for years was a bigger lie. The silent one finally spoke. His voice like stone. If we hear that voice again, even your land will be taken. Clara stepped forward. You will hear it again. Because it's not me being silenced now. It's my daughter who speaks. And I am her echo. At that moment, the man took a step. He reached for his weapon. But Jonas was faster. He raised his barrel. Didn't fire. But his voice was enough. If the first shot comes from you, the rest will come from us. The silent one smiled. Fear fades with time. But one drop of blood is worth a lifetime. Then he turned. And the others followed him. They left. But behind them, they left a threat. And a choice. Clara, Edith, and Jonas were now facing more than their past. They would face the people. The town was quiet. But it wasn't the quiet of peace. It was the silence of guilt soaked into the walls, echoing off wooden roofs, buried under the rugs like forgotten memories. Jonas, Clara, and Edith arrived together. All 3 were tired, but they walked tall. The town square hadn't changed over the years, but the 3 who entered it were no longer the same people. Clara's hair was no longer a mess. She wasn't leaning on her cane, she was walking. Edith's eyes were still sleepless, but steady. Jonas was unarmed, but his shoulders were set like armor. The sheriff met them at the gate. His face was tense. We got a warning, he said. I might have to stop you. If you don't, said Edith, this town will end up with deeper wounds. The sheriff turned to Clara. Do you really want to talk? They chose to forget. Clara took a step forward. But we remember, and we won't stay silent anymore. They gathered in the old church. People filled the room, sitting quietly, watching, curious, but cautious. Some didn't even recognize Clara. Others lowered their heads. The silent one didn't come. But the wall of fear he had built over the years still stood in their eyes. Clara stepped up to the pulpit. Her hand didn't tremble. My name is Clara Weber, she said. Once, they called me the woman who sang. Then a liar. Then mad. Then, they stopped saying my name at all. Because I stayed silent. Because I was silenced. Whispers rose from the pews. I lived in a house where a man confused love with God. And when he reached for my daughter, I burned down a church to stop him. But none of you heard that. Because back then, speaking out was a greater sin. Her eyes scanned the crowd. She didn't cry. Edith slowly stepped up beside her mother. They stood together at the pulpit. My name is Edith, she said. And for years, I believed my mother was dead. They told me I should think she was a bad person. But none of you told me the truth. You only shared the fear. Clara took her daughter's hand. Jonas stood in the back, by the wall. His eyes were full, but he didn't cry. He wasn't there to cry, he was there to carry a life. Clara kept speaking. I was silent. Then my daughter was silent. Then Jonas was silent. But silence didn't protect anyone. It only buried pain. Now this house, this town, this land, will be silent no more. A woman stood up. Then a man. Then an old person. One by one, people came toward Clara. One brought her a notebook and old-school record. Another handed her a hair clip one Edith wore as a child. And someone whispered to Clara, we believed you. But we didn't speak. By sunset, the square emptied. People left with their thoughts. But something had changed. A kind of quiet peace spread through the air. Not in hearts, maybe, but at least on tongues. That night, Jonas sat on the porch of his old farmhouse. Clara played the old musical instrument still hanging from the roof. Edith added honey to Jonas's tea. None of them spoke. They didn't need to anymore. And just before dawn, Jonas spoke in a whisper. The day I buried my daughter's photo was the first time I wanted to forget. But now I don't need to. Remembering. This time it heals. Clara smiled. Some houses don't fall, Jonas, because someone inside still tries to live. Edith looked at her mother. I'll stay, she said. I have nowhere else to go. But now, I have somewhere to return to. Jonas nodded. This place is more than enough for all of us. In the final scene, the door of the house was left slightly open. The wind touched a child's shoe. The shoe, still hanging above the door, gently swayed. But this time, it wasn't a threat. It was a memory. And as the sky lit up for the first time, no shadow was left behind. The Yindi, by the way, we noticed something small. Most people who watch these stories aren't actually subscribed to the channel. Maybe we get caught up in the moment, or just forget to hit the button. But your support truly helps us keep creating stories like this. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel.